Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The A Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host.
Hey guys, thank you for joining us today. We are talking all about micronutrients. I think I have inherited my ability to nerd out about this topic straight from the person who is going to be our presenter today. And so I'm really excited for you to hear from him because he really loves diving into this topic and being able to talk about it with all of you guys. And I'm really excited for him to dive in. So I'm not going to take any more of his time. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce him. He really has made himself a student of agriculture, both reading, studying, learning, and also hands-on. He's done test plots all across the country, hundreds and hundreds of test plots, studying a variety of things, but some of that was micronutrients specifically, and he's going to share some of that with you guys today. And I'm really excited to get to learn from him alongside of you guys. So with that, I will turn it over to the founder of A Better Way to Farm and our speaker for today, Rod Livesey.
Thank you, Kayla. I appreciate that. I am excited to get to share this with you guys. I hope you find some tremendous value here. That's our goal. So let's dive in here because the bottom line is what we want to talk about is making these micronutrients pay, because this is the year when we have to figure out what it is that we're going to do to make some money. And so the fact is this: if we're going to make these work, there has got to be a strategy. And guys, just try some. Try some is not a strategy. And when I tell you that, that means I need some commission. So why don't you buy this and see how it works for you? And that's not what we're talking about here, guys. We got to get into the difference between wasted dollars and yield gains that come down to just doing a few key things right. You know, the last 2 weeks have been very interesting to watch. We watched beans free fall 70 cents a bushel in one day. I hadn't seen that happen for many, many, many years. We watched urea in the Dakotas jump $300, $400, $500 a ton. Hadn't seen that happen in a lot of years. And so the bottom line is, guys, we've got to figure out some things. And as we try to get away from the same old, and what we need to be doing is saying, where can we spend these dollars that's going to get us the most back? I did a program for a guy, put it together, and he was like, this is a little more than what I thought it was going to be. And I responded with, we are going to address your need for half a gallon of manganese, for a quart of boron, for a quart of zinc that you've never addressed before. And we're going to do it for less than you were going to spend in a dry broadcast program just for P&K. And we're going to address your P&K at the same time. And as I share some of these things, I've got some good news and some bad news out of the things that I have dug out and that Kayla dug out for us to share today. So guys, I'm going to dive into those, but suffice it to say this: I believe that the key to being able to reduce our dependence upon P&K and cut back on using that is going to be dependent upon some of these things that I'm going to share with you as I go through here today. The good news is the industry is figuring out that there's a future here and that using the micronutrients, I've actually got articles that are going to say this is making the soil biology work better, and that's making the P&K become more available. The bad news is they're not being altruistic. Kayla, her whole life, has watched us do the right thing for the end grower, because everything in A Better Way to Farm comes down to a question, a single question, which is this: is this best for the people making the purchase? Because everything that happens in ag is good for somebody. It doesn't need to be good for me. It doesn't need to be good for Kayla, and it definitely doesn't need to be good for the retailer. It needs to be good for you guys. And that's what we're going to look at. But the first thing that I came to was the market forecast, where they were talking about the fact that in 2025, the farmers spent $800 million on micronutrients, but they believe by 2031 that the farmers will be spending $1.1 billion. And so they're looking at this and they're trying to figure out how to get that market share. One of the things that's driving this, they talk about the fact that the United States micronutrient fertilizer market benefits from carbon programs that reward higher nutrient use efficiency, creating a new revenue stream for growers. And they know that is going to be dependent upon using micronutrients. We are not going to become more efficient just putting on more NP and K. They talk about the fact that there are tremendous carbon programs here in Iowa, Illinois, California, where they have the voluntary carbon markets. And guys, I'm not following that. I'm not telling you to do it. But based on what I'm reading, just using micronutrients, there may be money available to get those micronutrients paid for off of those programs in some of the states. They talk about the fact that it is very common when they correct deficiencies to get 10 to 20 bushels per acre. And I'm going to tell you that that is very, very true. When they figure out how to actually do this, they'll be able to do better. Kayla's going to show us some pictures, and she's going to show us some graphs here in a little bit. Just something for you guys to write down. They say the EQIP and the CSP program is now reimbursing anywhere from 50 to 75% for your soil testing cost and 25 to 50% of first-year corrective measures when micronutrients are integrated into the management plan. Guys, if they'll pay half your micronutrients and half of your soil testing, that's going to be a better thing, but you're going to need to chase that down through the EQIP program and the CSP. They are also talking about the fact that balanced nutrition enhances soil health indicators such as the aggregate stability and the microbial respiration. Micronutrients, guys, I've been predicting this for a long time, and the key to soil health is going to come out to be micronutrients. We got all these people trying to sell you bugs in a jug, trying to sell you a lot of different things, and I'm not saying there's not something to enzymes. I'm not saying there isn't something to some of the bugs in a jug. What I am saying is, let's do homegrown first. Let's do the right thing by our soil and see if it won't heal itself. They talk about some of the issues that come with it. For instance, if you use a zinc sulfate, oftentimes that is going to precipitate out. And precipitate out is a nice word of saying turning into a tank full of goo, and it's going to plug your tips, plug your nozzles, plug your orifices, maybe plug your pumps. And so we want to make sure that we do this. I also thought it was interesting because all the companies tell us that, copper's not a fungicide, copper's not a fungicide. And then I get an industry publication and it says, copper-based products held a 22% share of the micronutrient fertilizer market in 2025. Guys, that's an indicator they ain't doing this correctly, because copper should not be 22% of micronutrient sales based on the thousands of soil tests that we see. However, they say this is happening due to their dual nutritional and fungicidal roles in corn and soybeans. In other words, they're saying that copper does have health characteristics when we use it. Again, they came back and hit on the carbon thing in this particular article. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these guys, but I want to build the case here to let you see where the market is going to go. And I'm telling you that you're going to get hit by more and more of the mainstream big name companies trying to get you to use micronutrients, because micronutrients have a word that this industry loves, and that word is margin. We have never been concerned with that. We have been concerned, guys, with making sure that you're doing the best thing to get everything out of your crop that you can get. There's an article called The Expanding Role of Micronutrients in Tight Margin Eras. And it says that traditionally, when the market tightens, the shift goes back to the big three, NP and K. And micronutrients have been the first inputs to be scaled back. However, the industry is pushing people more towards the micronutrients, getting them to back up on the P and K. It's funny, I watched a reel yesterday from someone who's got a huge Facebook following, and they've got some really good ideas, but they were just pounding on getting all of your base saturation K up to 6 or 7 or 8%. Is that ideal? Yes, it is. Is it cost effective with DAP at $900 a ton, and the potash it's going to take to do that, the potash being $400, $500, $600 a ton? I'm not sure this is the year to work on that. They talk about the fact that growers and retailers are learning more about when, where, and how to apply these micronutrients, and the manufacturers are providing solutions to make it a little easier and finally start to make them compatible. Guys, the industry is 30 years behind what you're going to watch today. 30 years behind, because for 30 years, we've known when, where, and how to apply these. And that's one of the things that we tell the guys when you work with us, will take 20 years off your learning curve. Can you go buy micros and experiment and try and figure it out? Yes. Can you run a soil test through Midwest Labs and get recommendations down to ounces per acre and dial this baby in so that you know when, where, and how? Yes, you can. Why do I want to spend 20 years trying to learn something that someone else already knows? I'll just read their book. In this case, I'll just read their soil test. This industry journal said we expect more attention on how micronutrients contribute to nutrient use efficiency, not just yield. I'm going to say that again. We expect to get more attention on how micronutrients contribute to nutrient use efficiency, not just yield. Keeping more of what the growers apply in the soil plant system and out of the waterways or out of the atmosphere. Guys, they're finally starting to come clean and say what we've been saying all along. We can cut back on our NP and K when we do the right things. And this next paragraph really got me excited because they said among users, we're seeing a shotgun approach and a rifle approach. Shotgun users prefer the convenience of they call it a foolproof nature of pre-packs. It ain't foolproof, guys. We've seen people use these pre-packs, the trio, the quadrus, the quintet, whatever, the orchestra, whatever you want to call it, where we've got 2, 3, 5, 6, 8 micros in one jug. Everything you need, everything you guys need in Virginia, same thing you need in Minnesota, same thing they need in Texas. Guys, that's a Christmas miracle. That ain't true. And so that's the shotgun approach. But they're also seeing farmers who appreciate the value and will incorporate more of a rifle approach where they get the top-end managers building their crops in real time and applying the specific micronutrients throughout the season at specific times. This latter approach delivers exactly what the crop needs, and for them, it's the utilization of the 4 R's. One of the first times I've actually heard the industry literally talk about using the 4 R's and not just giving it lip service, but actually doing it. One of the agronomists summed up this article and said, here's the deal. Micronutrients are no longer optional. They're increasingly recognized as essential for unlocking the crop's full genetic potential. And as genetics advance, sustainability pressures grow, the market will continue to reward the companies that combine innovation, expertise, and logistical reliability. Did you catch that? This is a trade journal. The market will reward the companies. They ain't doing this for you. They're saying the market's going to reward the companies. They can make more money if they'll finally do the right thing. Guys, take 20 years off the learning curve. Let's get to it. Again, one more and I'm done. Coming from an article, it says the United States micronutrient fertilizer market is poised for robust growth. And so they're going to talk about how much robust growth they can get and how much money they can make. They're saying that zinc, boron, manganese, and iron are consistently in high demand due to their widespread deficiency in U.S. soils. 3 years ago, they said you don't need micronutrients, you just need more P, more K. And now they're saying there's widespread deficiency. Man, it's amazing. Just happened in the last 3 years. And it talks about their vital function in photosynthesis, enzyme activity, and reproductive development in a variety of key crops like corn, soybeans, and wheat. There's increasing awareness among the growers about the detrimental effects of deficiencies of these, and that is the key driver behind sustained demand. Talks about some different areas. In the Corn Belt region, soil deficiencies, particularly zinc, are widespread, making it a primary consumer of zinc-based micronutrients. The sheer acreage and consistent demand builds a substantial volume for micronutrient consumption. They're trying to tell these guys what to try and sell you. You know, there's 2 mindsets here. There's the mindset of margin and there's the mindset of what's right for the grower. Talks about for you guys down in the southeast that where you have significant production of cotton, peanuts, and vegetables, they're going to contribute heavy to micronutrient consumption, and deficiencies here like magnesium and boron are very common. And they're going to start trying to push that. Guys, I don't want to be selling micronutrients based on what the area might need. I've been looking at soil tests. I've got a test right now where a guy's got one field needs 4 pints of manganese, and he needs on one field. The field a mile down the road needs none. So to put 0 on where it needs 4 pints is going to cost you money. To put 4 pints on where it doesn't need any, that's going to cost you a lot of money too. And here's the driving forces, and I'm done with these articles. Increasing soil nutrient depletion. It says intensive farming practices have led to a decline in natural soil fertility. Wow. The demand for higher crop yields and quality. Farmers under pressure to grow more food with improved nutritional value, making micronutrients crucial for plant growth and development. And lastly, the growing awareness of micronutrient importance, increased education and research highlight the critical roles of micronutrients in plant physiology, disease resistant, and here's the medal winner, Kayla. Stress tolerance, being able to take more stress. Right now, everybody and their dog is trying to sell you guys something and they call it. This is a mitigator. This mitigates stress. So let's dive in here. I just used that, guys, to build the case on what we were going to do and to tell you that you're going to get hit by the industry. And they're going to come to you and they're going to try and sell you these products based on what area that you're in. That is not what we're going to do. So let's talk first about the importance of the 4Rs. Number one, we do need the right product. And by the right product, I'm telling you this, not all micronutrients are created equal. The form matters. They talked in that article about zinc sulfate. You want to have a lot of fun? Dump some zinc sulfate, or even go back. I can remember when they used to use a lignin with their zinc. And when that happened, you put that in the tank and it turned into goo, and you had to scrape it out of the bottom and power wash it with hot water, rip off the hoses and start over, because every so often it would just go bad. Guys, the right form matters. We got to make sure that it's soluble. We've got to make sure that it's compatible. We've got to make sure that what we do is going to impact that plant. And guys, let me say this right here, right now. Write this down. Washington State Department of Ag, WSDA. I want to encourage you that one of the big things on getting the right product is to get one that has 0 heavy metals in it. And I have spent hours on that website. And the only people that I have found that have micronutrients that don't have cadmium, arsenic, lead, mercury, those are poisons. Those mess with the DNA of the plant. Those mess with how it reproduces. And we're the only company that does that. And so if quality matters, and here it does, that is what you want to be looking for. I want to tell you that the cheapest product, guys, is often the most expensive in terms of per bushel. I'll use this example. Many years ago, I had a 1977 Chevy pickup, and it was cheap, but I just kept putting money in it. You know, first it was a transmission, and then it was a wheel bearing, and then it was this, and then it was that. When I got all done, and I finally got to the point where it's like, I got to sell this truck, over the past 3 years, I probably had $10,000 in a pickup that was worth $2,500. The cheapest thing is not the least expensive. The cheapest thing is often the most expensive product. If I'd taken that 10 grand and put it with the 2,500 I got, I could have bought a lot better pickup 20 years ago. But I didn't do that. It was not the deal. We got to not only have the right product, we got to have the right timing. Guys, these 4Rs really matter here, because the micronutrients have got to be available when the plant demands them. The early stages, by V5, guys, we have already determined a lot of our yield. We have impacted our yield heavily. That's why we foliar feed micronutrients and fertilizer at the V3 to V5 stage, because there's a lot of things happen at V6 that determine how much money we're going to get back, how much yield we're going to get. Timing can determine whether or not that nutrient is used or wasted. Timing, and I'll probably come back to this later, for instance, boron. It's the reason when we make boron recommendations that we want a little bit up front, a little bit, like some pre-emerge or 2x2. We want some with the post-emerge chemicals. We want some with any kind of time we're going to be out there in the field in a foliar feed. And then if we're wide drop on our side dressing, that's when we put on the most. Why? Because boron doesn't translocate in the plant. So if we front load it, it does run away in the soil. Some of it will leave us. And if we front load it, it might go into the plant in heavy doses in the early stage, but it won't move into the new growth. And therefore, we want to split shot that boron. We want to talk about the right placement. Application is always going to affect efficiency. And the fact is, guys, that foliar, soil, or in furrow all have different roles. Let's go back to boron here, because we know that coverage, absorption, environmental conditions are going to influence the results. So do we want to go 0 by 0 or right on the seed? With boron, we're never going to go on the seed, ever. If someone is selling you a product with boron in it, they says, you can put this on the seed, one of two things is happening. Option one, there's not enough boron in there to make a difference. You are wasting your money. Option two, there is enough boron in there to make a difference, and you will know that because your germination will stink. One of the test plots, Kayla, that I ran was an accident. And obviously, oftentimes we learn the most from those. I put 3 pints of boron directly on the seed, and I successfully took a stand from 28,000 down to about 14,000 plants. And all season long, when I drove by that test plot, I had that driven into my brain as to why I never put boron directly on the seed. So do we go 0 by 0 or right on the plant? Not with boron, but with most of the other micros. Can we go 2 by 2? Yeah, that's a great place for boron. In a 2 by 2 band, it's not as great, but if that's all you have, you can put some other micros in there. And can we foliar feed them? Yes, every micronutrient that we have can be foliar fed, and we should do a tissue test. And when we foliar feed, we should go off of it. We should not be trying to just grab some miracle package. It's got everything in it, but we should be doing exactly what it says. And the last thing I want to talk about is the right availability. And this is where we get into chelation. And I think Kayla might have something here, but we'll put something up on this in a little bit. But guys, nutrients have to be available to the plant. If they get tied up in the soil, they're of no value. And we've got to make sure that they get into the plant. Chelation is going to protect those nutrients, and that's going to improve your uptake, which is going to allow you to utilize more of what you have. And let me say this, I put a little footnote on here. Well, let me go over what Kayla has there. Number one, it's important to understand that chelation is a Greek word for claw. We take EDTA, and when we put that EDTA around that zinc ion, that manganese ion, that copper ion, it protects it. Because if we just put zinc out there, the soil is going to just immediately tie up zinc or manganese or copper. And so it's really important that we protect that with that EDTA or HEDTA. And while we're here, there are some people who's, they don't like EDTA. They got all these theories. I don't know about their theories. Let me tell you what I do know. For 33 years, we have been doing this. And for 33 years, rather, we were putting it in the soil in a seed trench or foliar feeding it with EDTA chelation. It has worked. And there are people that would say, well, we like citric acid. That's a natural product. Look at this graph she has here. The stability constant when you chelate zinc with citric acid is 4.5. When you chelate it with EDTA, it's 16.5. Why would I not want a 4x stronger chelating? Well, maybe it'll be too strong. Yeah, as soon as it gets in the plant, it breaks apart. And the same people that don't like EDTA, there's a lot of people out here right now trying to get you to use acetic acid. I'm not opposed to acetic acid, but what we need to remember is how to pronounce EDTA. Ethylene, diamine, tetra, acetic acid. That's what EDTA is. It's an acetic acid. And so we want to make sure that we've got the right thing out there. You know, what's going to happen is as we chelate these, the uptake is better. The utilization is better. And let me say this, guys, this availability for those of you who are tuned in here and you're farming, we have something we call the trifecta. It's you guys who have a pH above 7.2, and I know there's people on here with 7.5, 8, 8.5, and then you have a high organic matter, 4, 5, 6, 7%, even higher. I've seen some crazy high. And then you have a high CEC, 25, 30, 32. If you have all three of those, we have found it very ineffective to build phosphorus levels. We have found it very ineffective to soil apply micronutrients. What do? We would come in there. We believe that row-placed phosphorus with an orthophosphate in the seed trench is your really only way to get phosphorus into that plant. We see those P1 tests at 5 and P2 of 105 because that pH is locking up all of that phosphorus that you apply. We see that pH, that organic matter, and that CEC rip the chelating agent off and tie up the zinc or the copper or the manganese or the iron. And so we don't tend to soil apply very much. We might put a pint of zinc in furrow. We might maybe put 8 ounces of manganese in there just to help with emergence if we've got it. And the rest of it, we're going to come back and foliar feed. So for those of you who are, let me be clear, it's the boys who are in the high CEC, high organic matter, high pH, that then we're going to have to go to more of a foliar feed. That chelation, guys, is very important when that claw ties that up. We've talked about how important it is to have a strong one, 4x better than the citric acid, or none whatsoever. Guys, your lower quality chelates are going to break down faster. They're going to reduce the nutrient availability, and they're definitely going to reduce your efficiency. Why is that? Because when you put them on unprotected, you're in trouble. The soil is going to tie them up. That stability constant, guys, it just simply measures how stable that nutrient is in solution and how long it'll stay available for plant uptake. Obviously, the lower stability equals lower efficiency. Higher stability equals better delivery to the plants. And we know that EDTA has one of the highest stability constants, making it the most reliable option. I want to talk to you a little bit about labeling. I think that Reagan was right when he said the scariest words in the English language were, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." Those words should terrify us. When he talked about that, I think he was talking here specifically about this. What I'm saying is that the government, in their infinite wisdom, someone can sell you a micronutrient that says chelated manganese, and only 5% of it has to be chelated. The other 95% is just in there. So you got 5% of the manganese in the jug chelated or protected. The other 95% is not. That means when you apply that to the soil, you're trying to get that 5% into the plant because the rest of it's not going. The rest of it is going to be tied up in the soil. Our products are 100% chelated. And that's important to understand because that means 100% of, if you're buying a product that's only 5% chelated, you should be buying it for 5% of the price of our product because you're only going to get the best you can hope for is to get 5% efficiency out of it. How are we going to tell this? How are we going to tell if it's well done or not? Well, one of the things we can do, I'm reminded of a friend of ours over in Illinois, and he came to our 2-day fundamentals of agronomy, and he called and he goes, "You were right." He said, "Rod, I went home. I have manganese. I bought it for about 60% of the price of your manganese. And when I picked the jug up, it said it weighed 9.1 pounds to the gallon. And our manganese weighs 11.0 pounds per gallon. What's that extra 1.1 pound in every gallon? Chelator. Guys, manganese is not that expensive. Zinc is not that expensive. Chelating agents are very expensive. And so if I cut corners and I don't chelate it, then all of a sudden I'm cheating you out of getting the response that you want. Heavier, fully chelated products are always going to give you better results. They're always going to give you a more consistent performance. So guys, take this away from the conversation. If the nutrient is not protected, it's not available. Chelation determines whether your investment gets into the plant or whether your investment just gets tied up. So how are we going to set this foundation? Guys, micronutrients do not each one live on an island. Micronutrients are not going to work in isolation. They're going to interact with each other, and they're going to interact with the soil chemistry. Getting these ratios right is just as important as applying the micronutrients themselves. So let's talk first of all about calcium and pH. We know that calcium impacts pH, or can, so does magnesium. We know that as pH goes upward, the availability of things like zinc, manganese, and iron goes downward, and balance is critical. Now, again, if you're farming in a low pH, that's not too hard to fix. You go get the right line, whether it be dolomitic or calcitic. If you have low mag soils, you want dolomite, where you're getting quite a bit of magnesium. If you have high magnesium soils, like we have here on our own farm, then you're going to want to get the calcitic lime. We have to truck our lime in for our own farm from 45 miles away because all the lime close to us has the same problem that my soil already has, too much mag. We know that if the pH is too low, that will increase the magnesium availability. And we know that too much magnesium is going to tighten the soils. It's going to reduce the root performance. Let's talk specifically about some of these ratios that we believe to be very important. Number one, we believe that we would like to be at 1.5 to 2 parts iron for every part of manganese. So what does that mean? We see this out of whack both directions. Here at our own farm, when we go plant next month, we will be putting on a lot of manganese. Why? 2 reasons. 1, my iron levels are off the chart. 2, my manganese levels are very low. And actually, there's 3. And then 3, that ratio here is 8-to-1. Iron and manganese fist fight to get into the plant. So if you have iron that is overwhelming, even the manganese that is there cannot get into the plant because the iron wins the fist fight. We know that we've got a ratio we need to maintain between potassium and magnesium. We do not want to see that magnesium more than 2, maybe 2.5 times K. At our own farm, what do we have? We've got magnesium overwhelming K, again, fist fight. Whichever one overwhelms keeps the other one from going in, and we're at like 5, 6, 7-to-1. So we have to use a high K starter to offset that. I work with growers in Nebraska. They have this out of whack the other way. We know that any time the K overwhelms the mag in parts per million, now we've got a magnesium deficiency. And guys, we've seen significant yield responses to a single pint of magnesium. And people say, well, we'll fix that. We want to fix the soil. Well, when you've already got 500 parts per million of potassium, I don't think it's smart to put on more potassium, nor is it cost effective. But those guys out there that got the 500 parts of that, they might have 400 parts of magnesium. It's still overwhelmed. The magnesium's still too high. we run the risk of it making the soil tight. We definitely, in that situation, don't want to put on more magnesium trying to fix it. It's easier and cost effective to farm around it. We know another ratio. Anytime that your P1 gets above 25 or your P2 is above 50, and those are good things. We'd like to have a 25 P1 and a 50 P2, but we know adding a pint of zinc in furrow is going to result in a significant yield increase. When we look at a soil test, we want to see that ratio. We'd like to see 8 or 10 parts of phosphorus to every part of zinc. So in other words, if my P1 is 30, I'd like to have a zinc reading of at least 3. And anytime that gets wider than that, I know I need to add zinc. When we get into that tissue test, if you want to look at your tissue test in parts per million, for every 100 parts per million of phosphorus, if we've only got 1 part per million of zinc, we're in trouble. That should be more like 70 or 80. And oftentimes we have built our phosphorus levels without touching our zinc. Earlier I talked about, draining them down. And that article that I read out of the trade journal, they're coming to grips with the fact. This is one of the things that has been a pet peeve of mine. I could get on a soapbox here, but here's the thing. We've been farming these soils here in the Midwest 100, 150, maybe 200 years. And all we've ever applied is NPK, NPK, NPK. And the people that have sold that to you used to say, that's all you need. And they would tell you, if you go to a liquid program, you're going to deplete your soils, you're going to mine the P and the K out of them, and boy, guys, that's going to be trouble. And the fact of the matter is, that is not true. And those same guys will say, well, but you don't need zinc. Or my question was, well, if I could farm out all the P and K in 1 year, in 200 years, what have I done to the zinc, manganese, iron, copper, boron? Well, they're okay. They're fine. They're fine. No, that's not true. As a matter of fact, now the trade journals are coming and saying, if you'll fix your zinc and your copper and your manganese, your boron, your magnesium, now all of a sudden you're going to see your P and your K work better, and you're going to see the soil release more of it. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. One of the things that we know is there's a relationship between glyphosate and manganese. And when we do that, when we recognize that, we can save ourselves a lot of heartache. So what we do is we put 1 pint of our manganese in with glyphosate. And guys, I want you to hear me very well. This is where the chelation matters. Glyphosate is a chelator. It ties up minerals. That's what it does to kill a weed. It starves it to death by chelating the nutrients that the weeds need to live. It also chelates part of what's going into that plant. That's why we see yellow flash, particularly in soybeans. Now, if you put a manganese in with your glyphosate that is not fully chelated, the manganese will be tied up by the glyphosate, and the glyphosate will be tied up by the manganese, which means you're still not protecting from yellow flash, and you're not getting a weed kill that you need. So 1 pint of 100% chelated manganese is your best friend in there. Guys, we know that there's a balance between nutrients and being able to drive that being available. If we can have availability, then that availability is going to drive yield. And that's what we're after as we're out here putting the products on. So let's talk about how it is, because we get guys, they say, well, I tried micronutrients once and they didn't work. Number one, misapplication is always going to lead to poor results. Most failures with the micronutrients are not because they don't work. They're because they were applied incorrectly or the wrong product was used. If you're going to take our zinc, manganese, copper, iron, magnesium, and you're just going to spray them on the ground, please don't buy them. Please don't buy them, because that is not efficient and you will not get the financial reward that you need this year. Boron, you can broadcast spray it because it's negatively charged and it will move in the soil profile. Those other micronutrients will not. They're going to stay right where they were. The second reason that micronutrient dollars get wasted is we use the wrong product. We use something that's low quality. Oh, we went to town and we found this stuff that's really cheap. We found this stuff that wasn't chelated or wasn't chelated correctly. So we use the wrong product. Another reason that we get into trouble with micronutrients is poor timing. We put them on at a time when the plant cannot use them. I'm astounded. I see recommendations being made by people who might even have the title CCA after their name, and they're wanting to apply a lot of micronutrients at R2. Guys, we've been looking at this for 33 years, and we cannot get a consistent ROI on any micronutrient at R2 with the exception of boron. And so if you want to run a test, run a test. I am very reluctant. Those micronutrients, V3, critical time. Get that baby on early so we have that whole growing season to impact yield. V8, get it on between V8 and V12 because we have a critical time coming there when we're getting into how many rows of kernels are on the plant and into that reproduction time. We see sometimes that the failure, the reason that they get wasted is we have an inefficient application. When we don't put them on correctly, again, we don't want to just broadcast them. We do not want to just spray them. And we do not want to put them on in the seed trench even if we have the high pH, the high organic matter, and the high CEC. You know, one of the things that we tend to ignore that makes us waste our micronutrients dollars is availability. We know that nutrients can get tied up in the soil due to soil conditions. We know that they can get tied up due to a lack of chelation. We know they can get tied up again in the high pH, high organic matter, high CEC realm. The issue here, guys, is not whether or not to use them. We know that we need to use them. We know that the future is more and more micronutrients. But the question is how to use them effectively. Guys, when we start looking at real world examples, when we start saying, what are we going to do here? We look at a corn program. The key, and you've got time, go today. Go pull soil tests, get them babies to Midwest Labs, get your account set up, and you will get 2 sets of recommendations. One's a dry broadcast. We don't hold you hostage. Nobody on here is going to put a gun to your head. Nobody on here is going to high pressure you. That's not who we are. We are going to show you options. Hopefully you're going to see things that will work for you and want to do that. But that's as far as what this goes. But the fact is this. In a corn program, we start with a soil test. We look at the micronutrients, saying how many ounces per acre. And so then what are we going to do? Well, we know if we have high phos levels that we're going to put zinc in because we don't want to have a zinc deficiency early on in that corn plant. We know that when we start looking at that next window, when are we going to apply these in a corn program or a soybean program, either one? That first foliar pass, V3 to V5. That means at V2, we want to take the tissue test and get them sent in because we want to correct any deficiencies. And guys, the fact of the matter is this. We know that sometimes we can be high in something in our soil. We had a weird deal right across the road here. This year, 25, we had an iron deficiency in soils that are incredibly high in iron. I don't know why. Something about the way the climate was. First year normally we have excessive iron in our plants. This year, we were deficient and we had to add a little bit. So we want to take that tissue test to get it correct. You know, at V8 to V12, we're going to probably take our best 50% of our acres and we're going to hit them again. Another gallon or 2 of 3-18-18, and we're going to target those micronutrients. And then at that reproductive stage, in that R2 stage, we want to support that pollination. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get that grain fill to be there. Boron, key ingredient. Potassium, key ingredient. That 26% nitrogen with boron in it is a great product. We do have some application guidelines that we want to talk about. Number 1, based on your total, on your soil test, based on your CEC, we're going to adjust our rates going across the field. But we never put on more than 5 pints in the seed trench if we're using a row tube or a splitter. We got a rebounder with a why not splitter on it. That's it. 5 pints is the limit. Now, we've got furrow jets on our planter, and we need such an astronomical amount of micronutrients that we are putting significantly more than that on, but it's only 5 pints in the trench, and the rest goes in the wings. I'm going to give you guys a little tip here that's going to make your life a lot better. Never put more than 1 pint of a micronutrient in per gallon of solution. So if I'm going to use the 5 pints of micros because I need them, boron we don't put in the trench, remember that, boron we don't put in the trench. I'll say that a lot. Boron we don't put in the trench, okay? However, if we need 5 pints or more, then we're going to put 5 pints in the seed trench. But if we're only putting on 3 gallons of starter, we're going to have to cut that with water. You cannot put 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound bag. And you cannot put more than 1 pint of micronutrient in a gallon of solution. You're begging for it to fall apart. Always mix your base solution first. Get your water and your fertilizer in there, and then add your micronutrients individually. The second bullet point on the right side, guys, I would write that down. Never pre-mix micros. We had a guy a couple years ago who was going to save some time, so he mixed a half a tote of zinc with a half a tote of manganese, and he made a full tote of goo. A very expensive full tote of junk. Don't ever pre-mix micros. You always add the lesser to the greater, and we add them straight into the tank. We're going to hit the boron thing again. Never put boron on the seed because this is going to really make you really sad. And we know, guys, that 4R management is not something that we give lip service to. It's not something that we use to keep the tree huggers happy. It's something that we utilize to make money. If we manage the 4Rs, then we can make more money. And that's what's really, really important at this stage. We know we have to get our mindset correct. Our mindset has got to be that precision matters. Good enough is not a standard. We've got to have the rate right, the timing right, the placement right. All of those are going to determine whether or not we're successful in getting money back from our investment. So let's talk about, do we want to go in here and go foliar feeding, or do we want to go in furrow? Oftentimes we recommend both. Here's the thing. We know that using tissue testing to guide our application makes us more effective. We know that it makes us more successful. Now, I see some soil tests that are so bad that we can tell them what they're going to have to foliar feed, or some of what they're going to have to foliar feed, without ever seeing a tissue test. But we still like to see that tissue test because we want to make sure we're getting in those growth stages, V3 to V5 or V8 to V12 or 2 at the right time. Guys, when we're applying this product, if we're foliar feeding, we want to be early in the morning or later in the evening because we want that stomata open so that we can take that product in. One of the keys is to use a non-ionic surfactant. We know that we're much more effective when we use an ounce of our NIS, our non-ionic surfactant. We get better coverage, we get better absorption. We also get it to go in quicker in case there's a rain coming. We know that one of the key principles here is to focus on a small droplet size. Guys, what are we after? We are after a droplet size that is just a mist. At the end of the day, when you're doing this with your headlights on and you turn around and you look back at the other end of the field, it should look like a fog just rolling in, hanging. We have guys who literally turn their tips backwards so that the spray comes out the back and not straight down so it'll float down. When we do that, there's an electromagnetic charge between the fertilizer and the plant, and so it doesn't very much of it hit the soil because it's attracted in. I had a grower at our last Fundamentals of Agronomy talk about the fact that he went out and watched his dad or his neighbor, I can't remember which it was, foliar feeding. And he said it was the coolest thing because you could literally just see that fog up high, and then it would just come in a funnel as it got down to the ground and be sucked right into that plant. That's why we want to make sure that we're using less than 8 gallons of total solution. That's why we want to make sure we have at least 65 pounds of pressure, and I'm happier at 75 or 80. High pressure, low volume. We know that if we're going to do this in furrow, there are some things that are key. Again, number one, no boron in the seed trench. Number two, we are never going to exceed 5 pints of micronutrients in a 30-inch row. And the fact is, guys, what we have to do is move from this broadband shotgun approach that I talked about earlier on. They're coming to grips with the fact that it's already, that ship has sailed. Those micronutrient packs are a thing of the past. Now, they're still going to keep selling them because some guys are going to want them. But the fact is, guys, we know that the rifle approach is better. Hit the target correctly. And so we're going to use targeted, data-driven decisions. We're going to increase our efficiency and our profitability. And I get the question, can I wide drop micros? Boron, absolutely, yes, because it mass flows and it moves around. We have some people that are wide dropping zinc and manganese. I am not a fan. I do not have data that shows me that that pays. If somebody wants to go run the test and run the strips and go through and do half the field without and then add the zinc or the manganese and come back and talk to us, I'm okay with that. But right now we have zero data on that, and I just drew a sad face by that's in my notes to say I'm not a fan of that. Guys, the bottom line here is ROI. And I'm reminded when we ran a test plot for 20 years in the same location. We ran corn on one side of the road and beans on the other at a farm we have down in Missouri on my mother-in-law's farm. On the one side of the road, 1 pint of zinc got 20 bushel to the acre every time. On the other side of the road, the zinc would get about 5 bushel to the acre. I don't know what the difference was. I'm going to guess that many years ago, when that was 2 farms instead of 1, somebody did something very different with manure on the one side of the road, but that's just theory. All I know is there's an ROI there And I don't ever want you to apply zinc thinking, oh, I'm going to get 20 bushel. I want you to apply zinc based off of a soil test or a tissue test telling you what the right thing is. And guys, there is a direct correlation. Strategy equals profitability. And if we do not have a strategy, if we're just shotgunning it, we're kidding ourselves. We should not be looking at these micronutrients as an added cost, but as a tool to increase efficiency and return. And if you're going to use these products, this is going to be how it is that you can start getting away from being so reliant on a lot of phosphorus and a lot of potassium. I just read you trade industry journals, and they're saying it. They're saying this is how that's going to work. And we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. Kayla, this is a picture right here. Would you like to unmute your mic and tell us what is that big difference in that line down the middle of that field?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see this was taken through the cab. You can see the reflection in the glass, but we can see that line right there. There's a really strong difference in color. And I think if I go back one slide, you can see it a little bit more zoomed out as well. But you can see that line right there. So this person, Joe, he's from Wisconsin. He was nice enough to send this picture in for us to talk about today. And he did a control with no micronutrients. And then that line down the middle is where he did the micronutrients according to what his soil test called for. So we could give you his exact prescription, but it probably wouldn't be exactly what your tests are calling for. But I wanted to put this in here to illustrate the fact that you can make a measurable difference by having a roadmap to go off of. Not guessing. He didn't just shoot from the hip and say, well, hopefully this will probably work. But he really, down to ounces per acre, gave a specific approach. And you can see the difference here. And then he went back and looked at his yield maps. And he said it was right around 27 bushels to the acre difference between these two strips right here. And then we have another one that was sent in. This was sent in by Larna from Missouri. This was on some testing for some beans that they did. So you can see the full information right here. And then I just put what the test was and the yield and kind of blew that up so you could see it a little bit more. This was just with starter, and the Centos is our sugar product. And then you can see zinc, manganese, and then the full system is cumulative, all of this. But even just looking at, if she said, what if we would have just added zinc and we would have done nothing else? That was 16 bushels to the acre, and they were at 1.2 pints. And the cost of just that zinc was $5.65 was what they had in that 1.2 pints of zinc. And I think it's safe to say with a 16 bushel yield bump, I think they covered their $5.65 cost there. A couple different things from totally different states to illustrate kind of what things are possible. Rod shared, one side of the road can be completely different than the other, but these were sent in, and so we wanted to share them with you guys.
I don't want you putting on 1.2 pints of zinc, guys. I don't want you to do this and say, this is what I'm going to get. That's not how it works. It's got to be based on the soil test. And if you do it by the soil test, great things happen. That's what we want to look at. Guys, you got 100 companies coming at you. I was at the Commodity Classic. We got a stress mitigator. Use this, it'll mitigate stress. Do this. Look at this corn. What are we looking at here? This is stress mitigation. That corn that doesn't look as well, that's stressed. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if it was too wet. I don't know if it was too dry, but that corn is stressed to who laid the rail. Okay? And when you do the right thing, when you put on the micronutrients, because that's how you mitigate stress. You let that plant be as healthy as it possibly can. And that's really important to make sure that we're going to mitigate that stress, but we do it by meeting the nutrient needs of this whole crop. So guys, again, micronutrients are not an expense. When applied correctly, they're going to drive profit. They are not going to be the panacea because you can't just go put some on. But here's what I will tell you. Urea is what? $900 a ton to $1,000. Phosphorus, $600 and up. K, anywhere from $400 to $500 a ton. And most of the time, the P and the K are not what's limiting. I go back to my friend Jerry. The first year he broke a 330 bushel yield in the NCGA contest. And everybody goes, man, if I had soil like Jerry, I could do that too. Really? You could take a organic matter of 1.8%, a CEC of 13, and you could take a P1 of 13 parts per million and grow 330 bushel? I don't think so. I think the key is in farming around it, knowing how to do it. So here's what we need you guys to do. We need you, well, Kayla, before I close this up, maybe what we ought to do is take any questions that you want me to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. One, for soil sampling and tissue sampling, how do we pull good samples to get good results?
Good question. One of the things that we have is we have an app developed that lets you go out and lay your field out in sections or grids. We don't grid sample, we do composites. But we need to get because we're going to do composite testing, we need good accurate data. We've got to make sure that we're pulling enough cores out of so every 2.5 acres at least, want to pull a core, put them in a clean bucket. If you're using a collect and go, it takes care of itself. Mix them really well, send it in. Tissue testing, same sign. Use the same points. Collect the leaves. And there's a tissue testing guide you can get from Midwest Labs. I just ordered 10 of them yesterday. It tells you what crop, at what stage, what leaf do I pull. I'll give you this. On corn and beans, at V2, you cut the plant off at the top of the ground, you send the entire plant in. And so we can talk you through that, and the person who invited you here can help you with it. But we need that good composite to make sure we're getting good data.
Next question. If you're needing to make another pass, a chemical pass herbicide, around the same time as foliar feeding, do you have a preference on which one is done first?
Yes, but it depends. My preference is that we don't do them together. I am not a weed and feed guy. Nitrogen and chemicals pre-emerge, fine. I got to decide if I'm trying to make it grow or make it die. So part of it has to do with the staging. You know, if I've got corn that's coming into V5, I really need to get it both done because I don't want to be out in there at V6 or V7. I'm going to hurt yield if I do that. However, the best time to kill a weed is right before it germs or shortly thereafter. If I've got a weed problem, then I'm going to spray the weeds first. And then I'm going to wait a few days and spray the foliar. If I don't have a weed problem, then I'm going to spray the foliar and wait a few days and spray the chemical. But I just, if I can get 2 to 3 days even in between those, it's a lot better.
Absolutely. You made a comment about the rain. What kind of timeline are we looking at between when we're going to foliar feed and when it's going to rain? How much time do we need there?
We like 24 to 48 hours. However, we've all had that experience where we're going to go do something and there's not a cloud between us and California and some shower just pops up. So Kayla, I'm going to tell you, I want 24 hours. I'm also going to tell you that's the number one reason in the world to use our non-ionic surfactant because it so much speeds up that absorption and cuts that down. And if we can just get even a few hours, we can get some significant response.
But that's speaking, I've had some product-specific questions in the chat, and I've made sure to iterate to everyone. What we're talking about is for the products that we know. We don't know every product, so we can't speak for every product. What we're talking about is for the experience we have with our products. Rod, with that, I will turn it back over to you to close this out.
Very good. Okay. So guys, number one, if you want more information, if you found something here that interests you, if you found something of value, and we hope that you did, reach out. Our team is more than happy to give you support in building that micronutrient strategy that is tailored to your operation. I can't build one for everybody, just say do this. We've got to have the test. We've got to make the recommendations based off of those. So I would encourage you, schedule a consultation. We'll sit down, we're going to review those soil or tissue tests, and then maybe we have to pull those tests before we can review them, and then we're going to build that program. Guys, the bottom line is this. You want value. Everybody should be looking for value. They should not be looking at price today. They should be looking at cost per bushel. Kayla, the price per acre, the price per gallon are terrible indicators because the only thing is, can I grow a bushel of beans for less than $9? Can I grow a bushel of corn for less than $3? And we've got to figure out how it is that we're going to do that. And that's what this system is geared towards. So let me say this, guys. It was an honor to get to do this. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to talking to you really soon. God bless, and may this season be a real bell ringer for you.
You can text webinar to 641-919-5570 and have a blessed day.